Right.
And the people, this is what the takeaway for me was. The people were trying to murder each other. Like street punk shows, you stage dive and people will get like upset at you sometimes, you know, and
Sure.
that's all we wanted to do as kids.
What is up, my friends? Thanks again for tuning in. This is Scope Exposure Podcast. I am very excited to be sitting down with a man of many bands, at least from an outsider's perspective. Someone that I've been following for a long ass time, but I don't think we've had much of a chance to have, kind of a detailed, conversation as far as like the core and things like that. But Jeff was always someone that I think was at the back of my mind of people that I want to hit up for an interview. So I feel very fortunate to be welcoming Jeff of Odd Man Out, GAG, Change, and a self-described rotating member of BRIGADE as well. Thanks for joining me, Jeff.
That is correct. Hey, everybody. What's up? I'm Jeff.
Yeah.
Played in a lot of bands over the years.
Yes. And yeah, like, the timing of, me reaching out to Jeff, we're just coming off of, the very epic JAG weekend that just took down just went down in Tacoma. So that's definitely going to be a talking point. But I think Odd Man Out was definitely a band that I think came onto my radar very early in the scoped lore, so to speak. You guys I can't remember if you headlined the pre-show for the DPK 5-year in 2019 or for one of the main bands to play that. But I remember leaving or watching that set and leaving very moved. And I think, there's just so much to talk about with you, Jeff. But before we get into
Awesome.
any of the music chats, we like to check a bev before we get into that. So it's a little earlier in the day, and I'm kind of excited. It might seem like a basic thing, but it sounds like there's more behind the scenes. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I introduced my coffee earlier behind the scenes. It's in a Seattle Kraken mug, which is also an interesting point here we can touch on.
Mm-hmm.
It's coffee, right?
Something local, or do you get something a little...
So this is actually a guy that used to live at this house. This is not my house. This is my friend Calvin's house. Left to Keurig. So I just made it out of a little pod, right? Mm-hmm. But I used some condensed milk, and then I mixed zinc and chromium in my coffee.
Okay.
And I usually do that in the mornings for glucose disposal and for general well-being and metabolism health.
Wow. Is that a recent life hack that you've unlocked, or have you been doing that for a number of years now?
I've been on the chromium more recently, like a few months ago, but zinc for the past couple of years for sure. Usually gotcha. I'd take it before bed, but I switched to doing it in the morning. Right. Because I didn't like the one I was taking at night was like a sleepy time supplement, and I don't like relying on melatonin to fall asleep.
Yeah, that's fair. So do you have is it weird for you to drink coffee without having kind of like some not additives, but like having it with something else, whether it's like a supplement to something else, or are you just sipping coffee all throughout the day as well?
Oh no, man. I mean, I'll get flack from coffee nerds all the time because I'm like addicted to Vietnamese coffee. I love like the very burnt, robust, sweet condensed milk flavors together. But I am non-discriminate with coffee, man. I'll drink all coffee. It doesn't matter what it is, when it is. I'm on iced coffee all day, every day. Like I allowed it to cool the room temperature, but any coffee, man, I'm going to be excited. I'm not picky.
Yeah, I know that, there's a lot of people that either we've had on the show or people that listen to this podcast that are big, third wave coffee heads, but I think I'm in the same boat where it's like I need whatever it is. So whether it's like I am making it at home or like if, I was out on the road and it's like all I have is gas station coffee, that's better than no coffee in my opinion. So
gas station coffee is like Shell station specifically drip. Incredible.
Shell drip.
That was
okay.
That was a bricklayer and Grimace staple when we toured with gas station coffee. AM PM too is solid. The drip.
Okay. Yeah. So shout out to all the Shell stations out there.
No, it's not shout out Shell.
no shout outs. just for, the fine people that are running those establishments and
Yes.
and making sure the coffee is a step above gas station coffee. Not
No
the
doubt.
Shell corporate initiative.
Very evil.
Yeah. So I've been eyeing this bev and looking forward to a good episode to check it. I feel like, I'll say there's a brewery here in Calgary that's literally just down the street from me actually, but they started doing some like non-alcoholic sodas, and the designs of these cans, I don't know if you can see this, is just kind of like
I see 'em.
super wacky. So the flavor of this is called just blue orange. So I don't know if that's just like a combo of like a blue raspberry and orange. It sounds like it's a slushy flavor as a soda. So that's what I'm gonna be checking for the episode.
All right, let's see what we got. Curious.
Yeah. Well, I gotta cheers you before we even get to it because I feel like that's bad karma for our sakes.
Look at it.
So like the actual color of this, like there's remnants of that first sip on the top side of the can, and it is blue. I don't know if I can. I feel like I don't want to spill.
Oh yeah, you're gonna spill that if you tilt it.
I've done almost 300 episodes, and I've so far, knock on wood, not had any spills on any of my gear. So that's a streak I'm trying to keep up. But it's blue in color and pretty tasty. I'm not tasting as much as the orange yet, but we'll have to see.
What does it taste like?
It tastes like. It kind of tastes like it's definitely like blue raspberry something, but like it's not super sweet, which I can kind of get behind. It kind of tastes like I could crush a couple of these without feeling like the sugar overhaul, if you know what I mean.
All right, scale of 1 to 7, no half.
5.
Solid 5. Okay, that's
Solid
pretty good.
5.
That's a pretty good beverage.
I think the minusing the points on the aspect of like orange is my favorite color. It's not my favorite flavor when it comes to bevs, but I'm missing the orange. So a little bit of false advertising so far. That's my 2 cents.
Do you know Griffin Kelly, who plays guitar for Odd Man Out?
I know of. I don't think we've exchanged a convo, but I know of. I've been following.
He is dubbed the king of bites and sips. Cobbs, we call him. He's the ultimate snack trier and taster. I feel like if you interviewed him, your entire podcast would be about the beverage.
I mean, I'm all for keeping things. I've had interviews with people where it's 2 hours, and the first hour is talking music, and the other half is off of something. I think like Lumpy from Days has been on the show. We've talked about coffee for an hour plus straight. So
hell yeah,
I'm always welcoming the guest recommendations, but the people that obsess over the snacks and things like that, I'm for as well. Has he put you onto anything when it comes to the goodies?
I mean, I always try, like touring with Griffin and Casey specifically, if they just see something, they will buy it. Like that's interesting. Any snack, doesn't matter if it sounds horrendous or not. If they have not tried it, they'll try it. So I get scraps here and there, but I'm not as adventurous. I mean, I am, but not with like processed foods and things like that. So a lot of the time I'm like, it's okay. I'll let you guys either enjoy it or throw it away.
Yeah. It sounds like we have the very similar mindset where it's like if if I've never seen this before, I might never see it again, so I might as well partake in it. So
Exactly.
that's the aspect of being a snack connoisseur or bev connoisseur from my
Yeah,
standpoint.
I heard that.
So Jeff, let's talk. I'm sure we could talk about snacks all day through the other members of your band, but let's talk about you specifically. Any new guests that I have here on the show, because some people come back for like multiple interviews and chats. But I always like to kind of get started on like kind of the origin of how you kind of discovered hardcore in general. So talk to me about like
Okay.
whether it was like the first riff, a first band, a first show experience that kind of puts you on the path of doing what you do.
Man, for hardcore. So I came from more like hardcore punk. Like I skated, so it was music. It was like skateboarding that brought me to music, right?
Mm.
So like the first couple anti-hero videos and the first 3 consolidated videos were huge for me. They had like Void, Minor Threat, English Dogs, Black Flag, like first wave like hardcore bands, right? Like Proto, that stuff. But
Right.
I didn't know what hardcore was. I just liked it. I liked street punk a lot. Like in high school, I liked like GBH, and I liked the Casualties, and I liked like the Virus. Global Threat toured a lot. I'd go to like those shows. And I remember I was headed to I think it was a Casualties show. And actually we could predate this. I saw American Nightmare and Hope Conspiracy. That was my first hardcore show ever when I was an actual child. I think that was like 2001, like the night before I had like gone to Rancid and snuck in with some friends. That tour was awesome, but I didn't know what I was seeing, and I didn't really think about it after that. Like, it was amazing, and when I think about it in the back of my head, I'm like, wow, I really would have appreciated that if I was more present. But I was straight up like 13.
Right.
And then I was going to a Casualty show, and my friend Travis Ware, who lives in LA now, he was like, yo, don't go to that show, come to this show. And he had made me like a mix CD in high school that had like some local, it had like Himsa and Undertow, like John Pettibone's band. It had American Nightmare on it, like a lot of early 2000s, late 90s stuff. And I listened to it on occasion, but I was like, my favorite band was SSD Control and like, first wave, like hardcore bands. So like the better production and everything, I was like, it's not my thing. I'm like a skater, I like this raw shit. So I was going to see Casualties. Travis tells me go to this other show. That show was Blue Monday, The Answer. And shoot, who else played that bill? I remember Blue Monday and The Answer for sure. The Answer was a straight edge band from Seattle. Blue Monday was a straight edge band from Vancouver, BC.
Right.
And the people, this is what the takeaway for me was. The people were trying to murder each other. Like street punk shows, you stage dive and people will get like upset at you sometimes,
Sure.
And that's all we wanted to do as kids was we were just energy junkies, right? We're skaters. So like we wanted to stage dive. That's all we wanted to do. So up and off the stage, stage diving like crazy. GBH, The Virus, Cheap Sex, whatever band that came through. And then I saw this fucking band, The Answer and Blue Monday, and people were just like, not only stage diving, but I saw head walking for the first time. And I was like, that's cool. You just see how far you can run across other human beings. And then like, people moshing too. I was like, that's badass. So then I was like, okay, what's this? I'm hanging out with him a lot more. He takes me to a Terror show. And it was right around the time that Lowest of the Low came out. So for me, top like Terror in terms of like contemporary hardcore bands was probably my favorite, because a lot of people don't realize that record Lowest of the Low has such a crossover to raw like hardcore punk. It's fast as fuck, it's gnarly, it beats you over the head, but it has that down tuning and that like the breakdown payoffs that people really like that are into the more contemporary hardcore stuff. It's basically Bastard Wind of Pain, but with better production. That's what Terror Lowest of the Low is. And so that was my favorite band for sure, seeing them. And the fact that Scott was always like, stage dive, stage dive, stage dive, which is obviously my mantra as well. Like, that's the best band. So I would say early 2000s Pacific Northwest stuff for me, it was like bands that were playing up here a lot were like Terror, Bane, which never really stuck for me, but of course it was like, you know, they were a big hardcore band, so I was going to a lot of Bane shows. Anyone that would come to the Northwest, I remember Stretch Armstrong came through a lot. That was my little brother's favorite band. And that was my gateway to contemporary, like what I call like capital H hardcore, modern hardcore.
There's so much to unpack there, but I really appreciate you, you know, going the whole gambit of, you know, front to back. I think the first thing that is interesting to me is like, you know, you brought up kind of initially finding a lot of this stuff through skateboarding. Is this like this, like, because I think you're like, there's a lot of people of my age who come on the show that accredit a lot of discovery to like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games. But I thought it was interesting how you were kind of mentioning it was like just certain videos of like whether it's I don't know if it was like a compilation or one specific skater was like, you know, watching that and hearing the, you know, the soundtrack of that video was like so mind exploding. So is that the correct, is like this is kind of predates like anything that like a soundtrack of a game would put people on for?
I think it was probably concurrently, but I was more into like the raw skateboarding stuff. Like I had 411 video magazines. It was VHSs. Like if you put in Anti-Hero, Cash Money, Vagrant and watch that VHS, it's probably on YouTube. It's like, it opens with them putting a cassette in a player, starts, it's Bad Brains. And then it's the first part, they're skating, and then the cassette eats itself and they pop a new cassette in. And then it's like dystopias on that of all bands. Like it's like very like niche raw. Like Bad Brains is extremely popular now, but at the time, not like you didn't see normal people wearing Bad Brains shirts. Now you can go to the mall and see Bad Brains shirts. But at the time you hear a band like that with no context and you're like, that's the craziest band I've ever heard.
Right. Well,
so those VHSs.
The only context, I guess, is just like the actual physical and visual, like putting the cassette in and like having that. So it's almost like check this shit out and like kind of doing that.
Yeah.
Versus like nowadays, like with the internet, it's just like people just slap on whatever the most trending song is of anything to help emphasize. But at least for you, it was like I'm honestly, because I can kind of obsess over like if they didn't decide to add that shot of them or that storytelling aspect, like it might not have connected with you as much.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was definitely the visuals and the skater that pushed it too. Like I really liked Andy Roy. He skated to Void, Who Are You? And he skated to English Dog, Psycho Killer. And both of those songs, I was just like, these are the craziest songs I've ever heard. This is the craziest person I've ever seen. And he's the sickest, craziest skater. So for me, it was like, you know, when you're a kid, you look up to people and you're like, they're awesome and whatever they listen to. And there's like, they had pretty obscure stuff on there. Like Steve Bailey skates to Escorbuto, like Spanish hardcore punk that's like pretty overlooked. It's like incredible. Like those guys, like those old skaters from like the late 90s and stuff, like they were music heads, like more so than a modern hardcore kid now. They know more about like early hardcore than like a modern streamer guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, right. And they were just skaters.
Yeah. So it sounds like the aspects of the extremes, whether it was skateboarding or music, were really appealing to you. And then going to that one, like, don't go to that show, go to this show. And it seemed like, are these people like actually trying? It's not even just like ruining someone's night. It's like it is a declaration of violence in some cases.
Yeah. And everyone has that. Everyone has their first hardcore show story. And that's what it always comes back to, is it was crazy. And that's the best part. Me and Joey from GAG and Apex were standing side stage when Terror was playing. And it's funny that this was your first question, but like this is years later, man. I'm talking about when I was a kid in like the early 2000s, and my first time seeing Terror. Now I'm 36. I'm watching Terror again, with my friend side stage, and we're just like, this is the best band. And we were talking about, and it's still now, we were just talking about it, and we were like, I was like, my top three, if I had to name like three like bands that made a huge impact on me that I didn't really have to do any gigging, they were like given to me from like seeing touring or whatever, including probably top three shows, were like Death Threat, Hatebreed, Terror. At that time, they came through Seattle. All three of them played like the craziest shows I'd ever been to, and we went back and forth with our top three, and we watched. Terror literally started playing Life and Death, and I was just like, "This is beautiful. This is awesome." I still feel the same way.
Yeah, I feel like Terror is one of those bands where, like, even with some of like their newest album, like they're still showing that they can bring out the new and the old, and like it's just anytime that I see them on a bill, it's never like, oh, they're playing and it's kind of like whatever. They always bring up the energy for whatever city that they're playing in. It's honestly really beautiful. And to have people like
100%.
yourself that discovered them early on and then could watch them and still have those not even nostalgic feelings, but it's like it's nostalgia mixed with like the fact that it's so sick and all these other aspects. It's a beautiful blend. It's beautiful hardcore smoothie.
It's deep for me, man, because I remember this is a funny story. An individual who remained nameless because unfortunately he made some mistakes and we're no longer friends. But we were friends for a long time when we were kids. I'm in high school. I'm literally 15 years old. It's my freshman year of high school, and it's like right before my sophomore year or whatever, near the end. Travis goes, "Hey man, let's go to the front of the school." I'm like, "Why?" I got to get to my class or whatever. He's like, "No, come on, let's go." We go to the front of the school. He's like, "We're going to see Terror." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "We're going to see Terror." And the person who remained nameless pulls up in a car, his sister's car. He's 15. He doesn't even have a learner's permit yet. Pulls up in his sister's car and he's like, "Get in, boys." And we drive up to what was then Graceland, El Corazon now. And we saw Terror that night. I think it was with Bane and Stretch Armstrong, but it was right around the time that Lois Low came out. And it was, I will never forget that. I will never forget leaving high school at 15 in a car, not being like, just the experience of being like, all of this is so cool. And then stage driving all night. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So you left school and then
we just went to Seattle, hung out.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you had to drive. You had to make a
like an hour drive.
I was like, is Terror just playing a matinee show like in the middle of like a school day? But yeah, that makes more sense then.
Yeah, it's an hour drive. His sister was in school, so she couldn't catch him stealing the car, essentially. So that was the time to leave.
Yeah, a perfectly executed let's go to the show plan.
Exactly.
That's very cool. So, obviously I want to chat. Well, I guess like one other question, I guess that's more about your background that I think we've danced around, but maybe I need clarification on is like you're a born and raised Seattlean. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but
Washington. I was born in Little Rock, and then I was shortly adopted when I was really young. My mom was 14 when she had me, so she couldn't really take care of a kid.
Yeah.
So she finished. The doctor, it was really cool. The doctor like sponsored her and like took care of her and everything because she was so young, as long as she was willing to finish school was like the clause. Right. And so she finished high school, she finished college. And during that time I was living with my grandma. She lived on a farm in Little Rock. And when I got adopted, we moved to Canada. And then I grew up in BC. Moved back to Olympia in my teenage years. That's where I went to school. And then I lived in Seattle since like, I was always going to shows in Seattle, but I mostly lived in Olympia until about 2013. And I moved to Seattle.
So even before the idea of like playing in bands and traveling and touring came into the picture, you were already privy to seeing a lot of the world more than anyone else your age at the time.
Oh, we'd go on skate trips. Like we were young and like we were good at skating because we started skating when we were so young. and we just skated all the time. So older guys would drive us places, and we just drive out into the middle of nowhere and just go to as many skate parks as possible. So even before, there was skating and music have a ton in common in terms of you just do something, you just fucking do it. So like traveling in that way, yeah. I mean, my first tour, I got asked by some older dudes to come with them on the tour down the West Coast. This band called Rocket Attack is like a power violence band. And they all seemed so old to me. They were like 21, 23, and I was 17. And I left high school, similar story, to go on this tour. Went down through the Bay, played the legendary Burnt Ramen, played Tijuana, did a bunch of cool stuff really young, for sure.
Okay. So you got, I guess, some experience doing that kind of like before bands and stuff came into the picture, or were you like starting to do that in addition to doing that?
Before bands. And I think that's probably why I got the bug so young, and why even now as an adult, if I plan tours, it's going to be somewhere cool. I'm going to try and go somewhere as different from my life as humanly possible.
Oh, okay. So you try to like, oh, let's not do like you would rather go to like a country outside of North America than doing like a packed Northeast run in the States.
100%. I'm more like hey, this random guy from fucking sub-Saharan Africa sent me a message on WhatsApp and was like, I'll book your band. I don't know him. I don't know what's up. No money. Let's go. That's more my style. I would take that opportunity so fast. If like someone put us on a pretty good spot on like a big pack Northeast run, I'd be like, okay, I'll check everyone's availability.
Yeah.
Versus, like, oh, random dude I don't know. Yeah, let's get it. It's somewhere crazy.
Yeah. And like, again, we'll get back to some of the origin aspects of all this, but like, why do you think that is? Because I know that there's a lot of people. I think obviously as you do more, like you're like, I've played New York like 6 times at this point, but I've never played this spot. So is that why that is, or do you think that there's something deeper as to why you want to?
No, because I'll go back like the last since 2017, I've been going to Bogota like every year, at least once a year, because it's so fucking cool. And like, so there is things like that for me. But no, I think it's more about life experience and the quality of human interaction I have. Like when you're on a Northeast run, it's like maybe like say a packed bus tour or something. There's something beautiful about that because you're in like misery with your friends and you're all like commiserating together. Right. And it's like the experience is beautiful between you and your friends, but the experience on stage it's just a little different versus your experience on stage when you're playing a venue that used to be a boxing gym that they just built a stage in, and everyone in the crowd is like trying to murder you while you play because they're so excited. Right. And then like the quality of conversation, meeting people of different walks of life and backgrounds, etc. There's just something that's a lot more enriching to me. Like I love both, but my soul feels better when I'm in a completely new place, experiencing completely new things.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I feel there's I have that, and I think I've experienced that a lot through doing like not only like filming bands for the past like 8 years, but also doing this podcast, because I love getting to have people internationally to call in, anywhere from Australia to like Thailand to like places in Europe, and just to hear like, hey, we don't have basements, so like this is how we set up our jams, and like and just all these different things. And my brain of when my bands are going to go out, I'm like, I would rather, I love playing in places like Western Canada, but like playing in places like Eastern Canada where the drives are longer, but there's just like there's almost like more appreciation because it's like less frequent as far as when things are happening. And I'm sure that's amplified to crazier numbers when you're playing, places in South America, or, like there's so many continents, and especially through doing like just the different things that we've seen, and especially post pandemic, of how many cool scenes there are within the hardcore space globally. Um, you brought up the Bogota example, and I think it's beautiful that people are thinking about maybe traveling to that fest on an like if that's an annual thing that is happening. And I think without that fest, people might not even like think about traveling there at any point in their life. So it's kind of how hardcore kind of like introduces a not even a scene, but like a community and a geographical location as like a cooler thing. And then all the locals get to show you all the good stuff around.
Exactly. And it's like always been there. Like since first wave hardcore, there's been bands all over the world. It's not just an American thing. It never has
Right.
been. All over the world. Early 80s, OG first wave hardcore band. And like the thing is, it just like, post COVID, there's a little bit more eye on it because hardcore is the biggest it's ever been because of social media. But like in the past, I was like still doing these things before COVID. I was still trying to travel, like doing tours to Mexico, South America, Asia, et cetera, because those were the coolest places. And because I'd hear from my peers, fellow like lifers, people who I like looked up to, who I was like, you're in it for the marrow, you're in it for the real raw fucking shit. Bands like, I guess when I was younger, bands maybe like Iron Lung or Coke Bus, bands that would like travel places, not just tour the US relentlessly. Like they would just be like, what's up with this? So I saw that from those kinds of examples, realized you could just book a tour anywhere and just go. Same with like Glue did this a lot. I had the privilege of going on a lot of tours with Glue, and they would always, like Harris and Rock and Mose, they would always prioritize going to the cuts, like Central America, but when no bands were doing that, South America when no bands were doing that. So when I started Odd Man Out, I was like, that's what I'm doing with Odd Man Out. That was like the goal, like just go the places that people don't go because those are the realest people. You meet people like when you're in the United States hardcore is fucking awesome. It's great. It's fucking sick. We have amazing bands and like so much support. We're almost oversaturated with support. So you get and with shows. So you get a lot of people who are just kind of like myself included. It's like, oh, there's another show tonight. I gotta turn in. I'm not making it. Like when you travel other places where maybe it's not as saturated, you get the real gritty experience you got when you were a kid coming to find hardcore, when you're 15 in your friend's garage and everybody's trying to kill each other.
Right.
That, but all the time. So it's like, that was always why I would prioritize things like Latin America, Asia, etc.
Yeah.
I think the only place at this point that I haven't toured is Africa. So I'm really trying to make that happen, but I just don't have contacts. I know people do stuff in South Africa, but I want to do like Egypt. Maybe I know people do stuff in Morocco too, but it's so close to Spain. I want to do like, sub-Saharan Africa would be ideal for me.
If you're listening to this episode and you got some Africa connects for hardcore, send it both Jeff and I's way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. I think you're totally right. Out of the shows that I played in the States, as a Canadian band, like there are people like that think that's cool, but I think it's amplified when you're in a place like Asia, and it's like, because at least from the Canadian side, like when any band even from the States is coming all the way to Calgary or wherever the fuck is happening, it's like it's your responsibility and almost like privilege to like show them a good time, to come all the way to this like desolate, beautiful country. And I say desolate because it's just like it's still snowy in
remote,
the middle.
Yeah.
But like having that appreciation, I feel like I think it's fair to say that the majority there are places within the U.S. that are going to show that love like a little bit more because if you're going to play in a place like Little Rock, Arkansas, like they don't get as many tours routed through. But I feel like anywhere outside of the U.S., it's like people are just like fully giving in to the vibe of a show versus like, oh yeah, I got this is sick, but I also have this thing next week and the week out, and it becomes a little bit more of like, well, hardcore is always on the schedule, but like for some people, it might be like the only cool thing that they get to experience within like a 3 to 6 month time.
Yeah, and socially, just Americans have a lot of inhibitions too. We don't want to embarrass ourselves, or
Right.
we just socially are a little different. We'll get there's like a sort of masculinity to it. Like you only want to be like violent in the pit. People aren't like as frequently. There's a I'm drawing a blank, but there's a social thing there too, for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So
But yeah, Calgary. Sorry.
No, what were you gonna say?
I think Calgary too. Like we would drive 16 hours to play Garbage State with like White Wards, GAG, Nudes, Grimace, Bricklayer. Like it's far, but like we're just like Calgary. Never played Calgary, so we just make it happen. We're playing. Odd Man Out's playing Edmonton at the end of this month.
Yeah,
so it's like we've never played Edmonton. Like sick, awesome. Yeah. I love taking opportunities like that. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Yeah, like a very close friend of mine, Dan, who's booking up there, is throwing that whole thing together. And I think when he said that, when he got you guys, I was like, that just sounds very Odd Man Out, in the sense of like you guys being like, we never played here, let's go. And now that we're kind of breaking down the why of some of those things, it makes sense. Let's talk about like the origin of Odd Man Out as a whole, though. So. Like, were you? So you're singing in that band, but you play the drums, you do bass, you kind of do a little bit of everything. So like, was singing in a band kind of like something you always wanted to do? Did you do that first and then pick up some instruments here and there? Like, what was kind of the order of that?
I hate singing in bands. So it's the worst. So I played drums first. Since I was a little kid, I've been playing drums. So I'd say it's the instrument I'm the most proficient in. And at the drop of a hat, literally day of, I'll play drums for your band. If I'm at a fest or something and something happens and you're like, hey, can you learn these songs? I'll be like, yeah, sure. And then play. I love playing drums. I will always play drums it's my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
When I was about 23, I was like, shit, man, I got to learn how to play guitar because I want to write music. So then I was blessed to be around so many talented musicians. When I was a kid, Bob Reed is a big one. He lives in Tacoma. He lived in Olympia when I was a kid. He taught me so much about playing guitar. He put me on guitar in a couple of his bands when we were kids. Like we played in a band called Train Yard when we were really young together. Like he always was supportive of me and my musical endeavors, even though I sucked ass when I started. And he was just super talented. So I learned a lot from him, and then I was like, all right, writing music. Him and I did the Odd Man Out demo together in 2008. And it was we were just kind of like disappointed. It was probably like maybe my second or third group of friends that just all sold out. Like as a straight edge individual and adult, it's difficult when your friends, when you're younger, to handle your friends essentially just making different life choices, which is totally fine. But when you're young, you're like, shoot, man, that sucks. And as it happens more and more, you're like, wow, this really sucks. So I was like, let's start this ridiculously straight edge band. It's just going to kind of be a secret, and we'll just drop off some tapes at Phantom City Records. So that's what we did. We recorded in Bob's basement, put it to bed. Years later, I had written a 7-inch and a couple songs, and I was like, I want to make this a band for Odd Man Out. And so that's when we recorded the CCHC EP, and also when we re-released the demo on Warthog Speak, which is our friend from the Bay's label. He did Caged Animal and a bunch of really sick bands in the Bay early on. So that was like 2011, I think. And by 2012, 2014, we were a touring machine, had a lineup set up. My initial idea was I want it to be like older people who are still straight edge. Older at the time was like mid-20s, but that feels old to be straight edge.
Right.
And so I had like my friend Adriana, who played bass in Train Yard. I wanted her to play. My friend Steven, I really wanted to play guitar. My friend James, I really wanted to play guitar. Bob, of course. But all those people they just had a lot going on in their lives and weren't really interested. then my buddy Mirche moved to Olympia at the time from Boise, and he was super amped on it. My buddy Griffin, who was actually, he was 100% always on and out. And so between me, Griffin, and Mirche, we were scabbing stuff together, making it work. We went through like a million drummers. Waylon Trim probably put in the most work with us of anyone we've ever had. Him and Robin Stylon from, I like shouting out people and bands, so I'll do that a lot. Robin's the man, love him to death. Same with Waylon. But you know, Robin lives super far away, so we don't always get to tour with him. But yeah, man, I don't know. Sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent. But basically, yeah, I just wanted to start. I don't like singing.
Right.
Oh, shoot. Sorry, another thought. I sang in this band Sixes. That was the first band I ever sang in, like a hardcore band. And I think the reason I don't like singing is because I didn't know what to do. I was kind of, as a kid, I didn't know what to do with a lot of my emotions. I was really upset and like socially stratified. I felt like I didn't get along with or understand people at all. And because of life circumstances and like how I grew up, I just still feel so different from everyone around me. And we started this band Sixes, me and Bob and Travis Bacon and Mackenzie Menken. Started this band. It was like, you know, C standard fucking hard ass hardcore. And I sang for it, and I didn't know what I was angrier about than my life circumstance. So I sang about like rape, sexual abuse, like really like intimate things for me to sing about. And it was like airing all this shit about my life out in the open. And it was super vulnerable, and it was really strange, but it created this really powerful band. And I think we touched a lot of people and did a lot of really cool things with Sixes. I would love to have that music available to people somewhere at some point. We had a 7-inch, a final tape, and a demo. They're out there on the internet, but I don't think they're on streaming services. Yeah, that band meant a lot to me. But afterward, I just came out with this bad taste in my mouth where I was just like, that was too vulnerable. I can't be doing that. So Odd Man Out to step in a different direction. It's completely a concept. I don't give a shit what anyone else does, but Odd Man Out is a crazy, like, straight edge band. That's all it's supposed to be about. Right. And, you know, there's nuanced topics. I talk on like socio-political stuff. I talk on drug trade. I talk on how people use banners, flags, nationalities, imagined communities to gratify themselves from other people. Like, but it all revolves around, I guess it all revolves around social stratification, which is the root of why I like straight edge. But anyway, easier for me to do a concept project where I'm just like, I just put on my mean face and it's not as intimate.
Intimate. So I just want to go back. You said the original idea of Odd Man Out was supposed to be like a secret project where you guys just recorded something and dropped off some tapes, and like it would never, like, was the idea for like 10 people to have these tapes, but like you guys never play a show or never like reveal like the credits as to who's doing what?
Yep. We've made 30 tapes. All they said on the inside is Odd Man Out is the straight edge. And
the straight edge. Okay.
Yeah. We took that at
the embodiment
the heart too. Exactly. When we'd play, I would say, "What's up? We're Odd Man Out. We are straight edge incarnate." And then we'd start.
That's hard.
And we had a revolving door lineup forever. It was like, I just wanted a fun Pacific Northwest band where it was like, if you're from the Pacific Northwest and you're straight edge, you're Odd Man Out. And then it expanded too. It was like, if you're just from the Pacific Northwest, you're Odd Man Out. And now it's like, you know, we have members that have played with us from all over. But it was just supposed to be like a community project, and we just wanted to put on for the Northwest when it became real. The real reason we even played a show was because I booked the Flex and Violent Reaction's first tour, the West Coast dates. Judge got a hold of me and asked me about booking them, and like Timmy and Sam I had talked to, and I loved them and thought they were so cool and their bands are so sick. So I was like, all right, I want to do something really fun for their show. So we did Convict's first show, which was me, Riley, Mitch, and Max. Mitch and Max played in this band called Bone Sickness. Max now plays in Caustic Room, Mortiferum, like metal guy. We had this hardcore band that was like super metal. So we played in Convict at that show, and then at the Olympia show, we had Odd Man Out's debut, first show, because Final Reaction, straight edge, flex, not straight edge, but Sam sings. So
Right.
we were like, let's just do a cool event, and the rest was history.
Wow. So like, I guess after that first show, like, was the idea of like, we'll just do one of these, and then it was like, oh, people like really fuck with this, and then the gears in your head start turning. You're like, oh, I have to like constantly be singing in this band. It seems like now this.
People didn't really like, people fucked with us, like the UK lads loved it, and like people from Olympia were like, oh, this is cool. But no, it was never like we need to tour with this. It was like, oh, I could use this to tour. Our first tour was Mexico, so
wow.
We flew to DC. We played one show in the United States that wasn't Olympia, and it was at this time. This was like 2013 or 14.
Yeah.
We flew to DC, played one show because Robin played bass, and Connor Dunnigan, who plays in tons of projects, played drums. The greatest people ever. OG Hefty Gang, my dogs from DC and Maryland. So we played the one show in DC, Protester and Odd Man Out, and then we flew to Mexico and just did all of Mexico, Protester and Odd Man Out. And I was like, yep, this is why I'm doing music.
Right.
Two really good friends together. We just fucking played basketball, went amazing places, jumped off waterfalls, and played awesome shows every night. It was awesome.
Right.
Just two random American bands playing Mexico.
Right. So like, I want to talk more about the latest release that you guys did, New Voice, but like just going back to the demo being called CCHC. What does that stand for? And there's a follow up as to why, and that'll transition to the newest record. But what does that stand for?
CCHC was Capital City Hardcore. So Olympia is the capital city of Washington. So we just called it Capital City Hardcore. The person who believed in us at that time was Aram Arslanian. He has a label called Unexploded Ordnance, and he put that 7-inch out for us because he was like, "You need to put this out." And then Popwig put it out as a tape, because I didn't think anyone cared about us, but allegedly, I guess, like I just got a text from Brendan Yates that just said "Odd Man Out," and I responded back. I said, what about it? And he was like, it's awesome. Right. And I was like, oh, and he was like, I'm listening on the Bandcamp. And like, I think we had maybe played, I can't remember. We played at some point a show with Turnstile or something. But just that reaching out and someone being like, I like this. And then we ended up doing tours together. Justice asked us to go out with Angel Dust before I played in Angel Dust. And we did that tour with them, and I was like, oh, people do like our band. Like, I didn't realize, because we never promoted. Also, keep in mind, this was pre-COVID, when people didn't, I mean, people did, but there wasn't like a whole system of like online publication that you go through for your band at that time. Right. It was just kind of like, it surprised me that people had even heard of it, essentially. It felt like a Northwest thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess the reason I wanted you to clarify that is I just was listening to New Voice, like kind of front to back a couple times, like leading up to this conversation. And
awesome.
Like, I think something that I was reflecting as to how the songwriting on that album, like, I was like trying to find a way of how to explain it, because songwriting for me is like, I've never been like a super prominent guitar player where I could just like bust out like the craziest power trip level solo, but like I always really appreciated when bands had like went outside the box when it came to like certain parts, or like how I would anticipate a certain like drum flow to hit, but it would be something totally not that, but it would almost be better because it wasn't what was, expected. Thank you. So just I was like driving between my work shoots today, and then I was like, it's like so unbelievably, it seems like a bunch of hardcore dudes that are like not maybe doing the proficiency of like jazz writing, but it feels like there's almost like pro level musicianship that like it's almost like on the fly. It feels on the fly at times. Um, and then as my brain's turning, is like it's like the opposite of cookie cutter. And then I was like looking at like CCHC. It's like there's no way that's called cookie cutter hardcore. But so again,
That's
this is a
funny.
very long-winded way of me saying I think New Voice has, I think the songwriting aspect alone is well ahead of its time. And
Thank you.
just wanted to kind of pick your brain as far as like how that record came together and how you guys decided to do some of the. It's not that there's like any songs that are like, oh, this is like so off the beaten path, but it feels like
Mhm.
even just the outros of some songs, I'm like, oh, this is how we're ending a song. That's so unique. So yeah.
Well, first, thank you. I appreciate that very much because, yeah, I put a lot of work into writing that LP. The same with CCHC because I was like, I don't want it to just be run of the mill. I don't want it to be boring. And I feel like it goes over people's heads a little bit because it's too unique in that way. But I feel like that's what makes a good hardcore LP. It has to flow and it has to have, like, there's a reason you press record. There's an A side and a B side, and it's supposed to move through both, and it's supposed to take you different places. It's supposed to make you feel different ways. And I feel like that's lost. That's a lost art. You have like legendary hardcore LPs that I was listening to a ton of before I started like writing for it, which was like Judge. The Judge LP is a huge one. Like you listen to that record and it moves you throughout, and it's so like triumphant and huge and just like epic. So I was like, that's what I want to write. I want to write something epic, but I also want it to be interesting. I don't want it to get stale or be like something someone else has always heard. So as a drummer, my songwriting style is already absolutely stupid and ridiculous. I start with a rhythm.
Wait, you start with drums first?
No, just a rhythm, a feeling in my head, right? So like, for instance, like think like the very first break on that record, and you sync where it's like da 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 da. That's like 1, 2. That's just 4/4. But in my head, I'm just thinking. I remember I was at work and I was just like, and I was just like, okay, put the voice memo, and was just kind of like, oh, does this sound like the fucking Wiggles or like something fucking bouncy and lame, or is this cool? And then I like started putting it, I was like, I'll take something like major and try and make it like a little darker, like just playing with different notes. And I was like, no, this is hard. And then then created the song around it. Like I'll just, like I heard a really early interview a long time ago with Madball where they were like, we just listen to rap records and like feel the rhythm and then write a riff around that. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I do. I'll get things from different places. And then dude, I could talk for like I take this nerd shit so seriously, like songwriting, that I could talk to you for multiple hours about every song, where every little influence came from, and like everything that was on the chopping block too. Like how I led up to it, what I decided to keep, etc. And I feel like that's something a lot of us in the Northwest do. We're all like nerds. We all really like music. My entire friend group, everyone I know who puts on like that for the Northwest has started a million bands, plays in a million bands. There's so many of them here. And they all just have this hyper drive and focus to be like, you could like, oh, I have this cool riff and like play a song around it, but it's not done. There's more that you can do to make it move. So to bring us back and not regress too much, the LP itself, I knew I wanted it to be interesting. I wanted to move different places. The song like Untitled, it was a love song to myself, essentially, needed to have like a somber feel, but you're coming out the back end feeling good by the end. That's the one that I had John Pettibone sing on from Undertow. That's like, he was growing up on Undertow, that like very emotional, like place you can come from in like hardcore music. He's the perfect example of just perfecting that style of songwriting through Undertow. So I was like, I have these concepts. I'm like, I want this like somber, love, emotional song on this Ahmed LP that also has just this like like beatdown break song on it too. You know what I mean? Like I wanted that movement from A to B that made it like interesting and exciting. And I didn't want it to just be a record that you play. Like kids nowadays, what do they want to do? They want to mosh. So their favorite bands are the ones where it's just moshing the entire time. The tempo's consistent. It's not really fast anymore. People don't really mess with fast stuff. So like a lot of the faster hardcore stuff in Odd Man Out kind of misses people and they aren't as excited about it. They're like waiting for the breakdown. Now it's all very breakdown and mosh focused, which is awesome. But a breakdown for me is a payoff. You've built to that point and you want to celebrate that point and you need to find a creative way to get there is what I enjoy. Just like music nerd stuff.
Dude, it's like also playing in a very fast band, like it like the whole aspect of like people not moving or not getting excited when like it's a fast part, I think like I'm totally on the same page with you. There's contrast and there's payoff as far as like, okay, we've gone from the minute and 15 minutes of just like blistering speed shit and now we're breaking it down, like literally breaking it down that way. But like the whole thing that I think about is like fast parts are needed within hardcore music. So I feel like if people don't react to it, then bands will stop writing it and then we'll just get a bunch of mid-tempo stuff. And then hopefully like down this dark path that I'm envisioning here, there hopefully would be some kind of correction. But I was like, I think it goes back to what we were saying before. I think it's like a social thing of like, I'm not going to fucking circle pit. Like I'm 30, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like if everyone commits, it could be the fucking sickest thing ever. So
no doubt. Yeah.
I don't want fast parts to be a lost art form when it comes to hardcore because I think it's needed.
Why they are is because people just throw shit at the wall and then they use it as their fast part and then they just use it as a conduit to the breakdown. It's like you need to know how you arrived there and it needs to move you. If you want to learn how to write good fast parts, just listen to Lowest of the Low and you'll understand. In contemporary hardcore, you'll understand. And like that reason is because there's a pedigree of like early 80s, late 80s, fast, good hardcore behind it. Every good straight edge band, straight ahead, floor punch, like these bands that for me, I'm always pulling riffs from for Odd Man Out, have fast parts that make you feel the same way the breakdowns do. They're driving, engaging, exciting.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what you're trying to create. And you can't just throw something at the wall, be like, that's a fast part that works, and have it lead into a breakdown for a song because you're just going to have people waiting for the next part because your fast part sucks or whatever the buildup is. So, yeah.
What is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to hardcore songwriting?
Man, that's I'd have to talk personally because I think, everybody can do whatever they want with music. That's why it's beautiful.
Sure.
And even if you're just throwing shit at the wall, you just want to play a show, that's fucking awesome. You're doing more than a lot of people by playing a show, getting on stage, beating that fear, etc. That's cool. I really like that. So like, I'll have to say personally, my biggest pet peeve would be, I guess for me, it was, this isn't probably going to be the answer you expected, but my own writer's block post-COVID was my biggest pet peeve. Now we have some stuff locked and loaded that we're going to record soon, and we'll have some new releases coming everybody's way. But for the longest time, I just felt completely uninspired. Like COVID for me, it was kind of like I was just going surfing and just trying to like get the fuck out of there because I just didn't I'm not inspired to write music. I know a lot of people sat in the lab and like were creating.
Sure.
I wasn't inspired in that way. I was just like, if I can't play shows, that's like 50%.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm just not excited about hardcore right now because I can't stage that. So I'm not necessarily excited about it. So like still listened to a lot, and et cetera. We still had all of the band chats. We're still talking about tour, when we're going to tour, blah blah blah. We started touring. I mean, I think BRIGADE was some of the first shows in the U.S. like in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and like you could tell people wanted it. But before that, it was it's got to be that writer's block, just like sitting down, wanting to write, and just being completely uninspired, and then just having to set the guitar down.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a. It is
It's more of a frustration. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
But it totally makes sense because, like, for one of our shows here, like we recap the month of releases, and like kind of talk about some cool stuff that stuck out to me and my co-host. And a friend of mine, his name is Luke Cave. He sings for a band called Deal With It, and started a new project called True Name. And when he called into the episode, he was like, "Yeah, we had this big, kind of like a one-day fest, kind of in Atlanta," and he just walked away from that show just feeling like super just on cloud nine, feeling hella inspired on how everything kind of came together. And he wrote like 2 demos like back to back, and I was like, well,
hell yeah.
so there is for sure an aspect of like, yeah, some people can, they have their fucking DAW and things set up and they want to do that, but like for some people it's like if they can't, if they don't have the fuel from like going to a show or playing a show or getting to, because there is, in my opinion, there's a spiritual side to like hardcore, like, because I think that energy and what you feel in the room, that's the stuff that I need to like write my best work. And definitely not having that for an entire year, some people are like, well, I need to have that outlet through doing something else, at least in the meantime.
For inspiration, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I may have thought of a pet peeve that kind of connects it. It for me, it would be being hyper analytical and too critical. Like I'll write something that could be good and cool, and then I'm just like, no, I throw it away. And like for being that hypercritical and thinking about it that much, like I'll write this LP, right? Like New Voice, that I think is amazing, and everybody, I can't, like the song, like songwriting, sure, I wrote the songs, but like it came together because of the individuals too. Griffin is the solid rock, one of the best. Like I couldn't play the songs like Griffin plays. He is like one of the best in terms of like tone, like excess noise suppression, like being a riffsmith that will never forget a riff and play it perfectly every time. Griffin, amazing. Casey came into the fold, awesome bass player, best energy ever, played it better than I could have played it on the LP. Awesome. Waylon at the time, we put him through some drum boot camp, and he took it super seriously, and you could see him excel as like we practiced leading up to recording the LP, and you could see these changes happen in him and his attitude and his drive, and he killed it. He knocked it out of the park. And like all I did on the LP musically, aside from write the songs, was the post-production stuff, like adding some of those layered drum tracks and like some of just the interesting weird stuff. Me and Cameron did that together. But like then I create this LP gets created, which is a joint effort. But in my head, I think like, all right, it gets created, and then it misses a lot of people, either because it doesn't have the correct like promotion, or people don't take the time. It's so flash in the pan now. Like I don't know many people who sit down and listen to records like I listen to records. Like when something new comes out, it takes me a while to get to it. I don't just stream it on my phone absentmindedly, and I'm like, oh, this is the new greatest band because everyone's telling me it's the new greatest band. I sit down, I play the entire thing, and I think about it as it's going. And like, maybe that's too much thought. This is the pet peeve. Maybe that's too much, because for a lot of people, they're just putting it out because they wrote some music with their friends, and that's awesome. And if it's like gets very popular and people like it because of that, that's fucking awesome. So maybe I pigeonhole myself by thinking about it that critically and sitting down and making sure, okay, A to B, does that flow well? Like C to D, does that flow well? Like, like, I don't know.
I don't think that you are off base on the sense of having, like, I don't think great records are only defined by stream numbers or opportunities that bands get because of, like, the attention or things like that. Like, I think true works of art sometimes like are like I think that there is something to say when it's like I'm seeing all of this and like I think this is all kind of like I think there's just a whole new wave of people that are listening to hardcore, and those people have like a wide variety as far as like they like the really like basic shit, but they also like really like I almost think that release is almost like an advanced HC LP,
It's
and
advanced hardcore, yeah.
it's advanced capital A advanced hardcore,
It's like
but
old head record.
yeah, but I think like I think it scratches a lot of things for me, as I've said before, and I also think like having like some ADHD in the mix of that as well, as far as like things are always like unexpected, like that definitely helps. But yeah, I think I've definitely been in the same camp as you, as like being too overcritical about how everything matters. But I think at the end of the day, if you're just trying to make that for yourself, whether versus anyone else, like and you can be at peace if Spotify burns to the ground and it's like that's the only it, and no one else can listen to it, but it's like, well, did I write the record that I wanted to? And it sounds like you did, and I think that is, I don't know, I think it's a fantastic piece of art, dude. Advanced
And
HC is a great term that we've coined here.
I'd have to agree. And I think that's a great summary. Yeah, it's more like I wanted to write a record that would stand the test of time and sit in that same space that like the Judge LP sits. Obviously, never as influential, but like like that same kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, the majority of people that consume music nowadays, it's on their phone absentmindedly. And like the record that I wanted to write demands your attention from track one to the end, and I want you to have that experience through it. So yeah, that's
And
good summary. Good summary.
it's also not like like every track is 3.5 minutes. We're gonna really hold
No,
on to your attention. Like it's enough where it's like if you don't catch it around the first time, like wait until the NASCAR cars like come around and we'll go again. And I
there's an
find
8-second song on that record.
exactly. You can listen to, if you don't get it the first time, like put it together, the third or fourth spin of an 8-second duration. But I find also that when bands drop something new, like, and it doesn't make sense to me immediately. I almost feel like indebted to like, well, they put so much work into this. I feel like I'm gonna sit with it for a couple weeks, and then usually by that point, I'm like, okay, I get what they were trying to do,
Yeah,
with whatever.
yeah. Do the
So
research.
I guess speaking of time, it's been 5 years since New Voice came out. So, you mentioned that you guys have like some new stuff in the works. And I guess
Let's
like
subtract COVID years, though. We're going to subtract COVID years and say 3.
okay, yeah, okay. I'll give you that. So it's been a few years since that's been going down. So like, what is like I guess the first step is just getting in the studio. Do you guys have stuff like booked, or is that not yet? Too soon to say.
Yeah, so I mean, with Odd Man Out, it was always kind of more of a relaxed project because everyone has other bands. And I especially was really busy at the time because just Angel Dust was taking up all my time, but also between GAG and then Change started, etc. Lots of like touring going on. So it was meant to be kind of a backseat project. So we do it when it feels right. And lately it's been feeling right. So me and Griff have been riffing. I have an insane amount of video saved on my phone of songs. So all it takes is us getting together, making the time, and recording it. We don't have time booked, but we're going to do the same thing we did last time. So we already know the formula. That unfortunately we're all on tour until I get back. Like the end of this month it starts, and then I get back in the middle of May. So probably summer, get together, hash them out real quick, and record it because the work's already been done with the writing process. Now it's just a matter of putting everybody's individual flair on it.
Very cool. I'm very excited to see it. So to before we get into talking about the craziness that is all the bands that you played in, or play in, um, so Jag in Tacoma just went down. Odd Man Out got to play it
Yes.
as well. Was that did you just have to do one set, or did you have a couple that you were on duty for?
Just gag and oddman out this weekend.
Gag and
So it
oddman
was
out.
nice. A little more relaxing than usual.
Yes, I think I saw, friend of the show Charlie was playing one set every single day.
Oh,
Um,
Charlie was all over the place.
I don't know anyone else from Boise who can do it like he does. So, little shout out to Charlie there. But
Straight up.
just overall thoughts on the weekend and how things went. It's truly been really cool to see how that fest has really blossomed in the last number of years.
Hmm.
And I feel like, from all the videos I was seeing, it was like it most definitely was the biggest year as far as lineup goes. But like it seemed like the vibe was maximized. So, any thoughts coming off the Jag high that you would like to share?
Yeah, man, it was so irresponsible and so awesome. Like booking that many bands of that caliber in that small of a space, like that's some real shit. It was fucking awesome. Shout out to Zach and Hannah and Matt and everybody who put in so much work into making that happen. Everybody who had to run door, doing the sound, everything. It's a well-oiled machine only because of that community and those friendships. I've always been a big fan of everything that Zach does. When Rainfest ended, it left a hole for a lot of people, obviously.
Right.
And Jag, I feel like, is this smaller event with the same energy. Especially, I mean, this year was crazy. It was awesome. I had a blast. I watched I watched at least a couple songs of every single set and only stepped out to get food. But man, it was awesome. And like just having a community driven event like that, I did a fest for a long time in Olympia in the South Sound. And that kind of ran through even after Rainfest ended. So kind of had like a similar hole to be filled for like a Northwest event. But then COVID happened, venues closed, and it couldn't happen. But fortunately, I'll be doing another event this September with a bunch of international bands. So keep a lookout for that.
Okay.
I'm fairly confident. I haven't released a flyer yet, but I'm fairly confident I'm going to call it The Deal, Easy, Brotherhood. Plus, it's going to be in Seattle this time, West Seattle Legion Hall, because I don't have venues in Olympia anymore. And it'll just be easier in Seattle, I feel like, anyway. But I'm really bad at getting off topic. Jag was fucking awesome. Yeah. Still on a high from this weekend. Every set was the gag set was awesome. The Amen Out set was so much fucking fun. Like all the locals murdered it. There was there's a group of younger kids that play in a band called Spur that was amazing on Sunday.
Spurs, fucking awesome. I got to see them in
Yeah.
Calgary. Yeah, they're great.
Awesome. They're just I mean, I don't they're adults, but they're kids to us because we're old. But yeah, they're awesome. Their bands are awesome. And there's a whole crew of like kids from all the little cuts outside of Seattle and bands from Tacoma, and like everybody just the Northwest is a beautiful, very creative place that fosters a lot of different styles, and everybody gets along and everybody kicks it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Jag was beautiful. That's all I can say. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful. What set surprised you the most?
Surprised me? Let me think. It was really a surprise to me that I was extremely bummed that I missed with C4 covering The Deal, because I watched, basically what I do is I'll watch the first couple songs of every band and then I'll go sit down, because standing up for however many hours is extremely hard.
Yeah.
But I went up to the green room to get snacks, and then someone told me they did that, and I was so upset because it's one of my favorite hardcore songs of all time, and it's in Seattle. I'm like, right. I don't know. I mean, we've covered it a million times. We covered it at Jag last year, and just recently in Columbia with it was like half Amen Out, half BRIGADE. We scabbed it together and did it for their fest. But like, I would have liked to see that. That was a surprise that I missed. That I was bummed on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the C4 was a band that when I saw that lineup come out, I was like, they just kind of like pop up like landmines at times, like not trying to connect the whole C4 and explosive analogy here, but like at least for me, I don't really see them as active, but they again just like kind of like boom, we're here and we're doing this, and they fucking kill it.
Yeah. In terms of bands that I had never heard too, that surprised me, that I was like, oh, that was awesome. This band Misery Whip from Portland,
Mhm.
and then that band Extinguished from the Bay, which was
Mhm.
Jose is in it. So I knew one of the members at least, and I met the other guys when we were chilling. But both of those uh, sets, I was like, oh, this shit's sick. And then also, I didn't know anything about Misery Whip at all. So it's very cool to see more Northwest straight edge bands because that's not common
Yeah.
anymore, at least.
Right.
Not very
Right.
common.
Okay. So the long overdue, like, I feel like there's so many areas that we can take this. I guess like the first thing I want to ask, as far as there's kind of 3, 4 bands that you were like, I'm a part of this band, but then there's, I feel like, a dozen more acts of like either that we've mentioned or like things that people see where it's like, oh yeah, I'm playing drums for this band, or I'm doing bass, or I'm playing guitar. So maybe the first question that I want to ask is just why? Why do so much, especially like you're 5 years older than me, and I definitely am in the time in hardcore where I want to still be doing more in the midst of all the craziness of my own personal life. But like,
Mm-hmm.
is that kind of the same for you? Or is there like just ways that you've set it up so you can just do whatever you want whenever?
I think honestly, yeah, just because I lived my whole life like this. Like I started touring. My first tour, I was 17. So I've literally been touring pretty much nonstop since then. So it's all I've ever really known. So actually, the normal life stuff is the stuff that feels like the weird, like I need to fit this in and try and make it work. So
Right.
if like, yeah, if someone asks me to fill in for a band, I'll just say yes. Like it's very rare that I'll say no because I really like touring. It's what I feel comfortable doing. And I like playing music with my friends, especially if it's drums. So yeah, that's kind of that. I mean, there was a period of time I hurt my back really bad. I herniated 2 discs in my lumbar spine, and at the time I was training uh, a ton of jujitsu and still trying to do powerlifting like I had always done. So I realized I made a life adjustment where it was like, okay, I'm going to focus more on combat sports and less on lifting weights. I'm strong enough. I feel good enough. I need to make this shit. So like, um, recalibrating kind of for a second there. I was like, I'm really hurt. I trained too hard. I can't balance this and touring, but I still toured anyway. I went on a Raw Brigade tour where I had to be in a wheelchair, and I would sit. I would like I I was playing bass for this one because I'll rotate between bass and drums, and I'd play bass, and then I'd have to sit down after like 2 songs until the pain would go away, and it would never really go away. It would just kind of refocus in my back and not so
Mm.
much like my nerves all over. And then I'd stand up, play another 2 songs, and then my whole body would be on fire and I'd have to sit down again. It was fucked up. And then GAG got asked to play the Glow On record release in Baltimore at Turnstile. And so it was 2 days after I hurt myself. So I had a fully ruptured, herniated L4, L5 disc and L5, S1 disc. That means the annulus pulsus that the nucleus pulposus, sorry, ripped through the annulus, spilled into my spinal cavity, which I also learned I have quite a bit of spinal stenosis just over time, from which is narrowing of the spinal cavity, just from over time sitting, playing drums with rounded flexion, putting pressure on my disc.
Right.
So I just have all this fluid in my spine, touching all my nerves, driving me crazy, making me feel angry all the time and in pain all the time. My glute is like this big, like it has this swollen like football on the side of it. And I just get on a plane. The only way I can really relieve the pain is to sit pigeon. So I bring my leg up and I fold it over and just kind of sit here until everything goes numb. Flew for 6 hours. This was a day after. So I rewind. I'm in the gym doing a deload. So just controlling the eccentric on a deadlift, not even super heavy weight. I feel a weird pop. My leg goes numb. It hurts pretty bad. And I'm like, oh, I'll just finish my workout. I don't know what that was. Finish my workout. By the time I get home, I'm like, oh man, it really it's giving me trouble. So I just kind of lay down. I'm like, the only way I can get comfortable is on my stomach. I'm like, this is probably all right. I'm like, pretty good idea to train jiu-jitsu tonight. So I go in, I train. Someone stacks me, meaning they the pass they throw my legs essentially over my head. and I feel this second pop. And then all of a sudden it feels like my upper body's disconnected from my hips. And I'm like, oh, stop, hold on. I'm like, I tap and I'm like, stop. And I'm just kind of like, oh, sorry, something's wrong. And I go to stand up and I'm like, oh, fuck, I can't stand up. I'm like, oh, shit. And I'm just like, I gotta go. I crawl home. Like I tell my professor, I'm like, I gotta go. And he's like, no, you don't. Like, get back in there. And I'm like, I can't. And he's like, oh, you really can't. I'm like, I can't. I was like, something's wrong. And so I like crawl out and he's like, you good? You need me to like call an ambulance? Are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm super bad at gauging my own pain. I was not fine.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, I'm good. I just gotta go. I'm sorry. And I crawl. I like at the time the gym was like 3 blocks from my house. So every like 15 feet I lay down on the cement, like on the sidewalk, and then I crawl a little bit, and then I'll like try and stand up, walk, and just be like, oh fuck, and I have to lay back down. And then 2 days later, I have to go play that Baltimore show. So I get on a plane, I fly.
You crawl to the airport? Like,
no, I could bear the plane, and I got a wheelchair, so I got like the early access. They wheeled me there and stuff. And then I get off, and I'm like, I see all my friends, and I'm like, I'm chilling in the green room with Pat, and I'm just kind of like laying on him on the couch. There's a picture of it. I'm just like laying on him. I'm like, yeah, I can't really stand up. I got this softball-sized swollen thing on my glute, and it hurts really bad. I don't know what it is. And then there's footage of the show too. I'm playing the set, and I'm just like rigid posture, just like invisible pain the whole time, just like trying to choke it back. It was brutal. So moments like that make me realize, circling back, sorry for the diatribe, yeah, maybe I need to like relax and tour less and like whatever. I just got better at managing my recovery. Now I'm back to doing the same things I always do.
Mm-hmm. What's like, outside of this very painful situation that you had to be a part of, you brought up like if someone was in a pinch and needed me, and that could be a band of like a turnstile level to a local level, like,
Absolutely,
it sounds like you would be down to do. What's like the least amount of time that you've had to like learn a couple songs or a full set, and how that part took?
Oh, hours for sure. It was a tour, Angel Dust, Scourge, and Result of Choice. And Result of Choice drummer left the tour. I, at the time, did not know their songs. The tour was my awareness of the band, and they're awesome. I met all those people, and they're so cool, and their band fucking rocks. All the people in the band are awesome. But they're like, yeah, let's divide the songs up amongst like you guys, and you guys can just play them tonight. And we're like, okay. So I think I took on 3 of them. Dan took on 3 of them, and Carson, who was playing drums for Scourge, took on 3 of them. And I just had like one headphone in my ear, and I was like playing pool with Riley Gale and Pat. We're just playing pool in the back room, and I'm just kind of listening to it in the one headphone, just being like, okay, it stops there, stop, go, stop. Because when you're a drummer and you've played hardcore for however long, it's like plug and play. You just need to know the dynamics. As long as you know the dynamics of the song, when something needs to cut, when it needs to start, and what tempo goes where, you can play. You'll be okay.
Right.
So because it's not as intricate when you've played, drums for 20 years or whatever, and you can just kind of plug and play, it's not as intricate as having to for me, having to sit down and like do a riffs are fine too. I do it all the time for bands, but that was probably the quickest couple hours. Sat down and played. Nailed it. No mistake. Yeah. And that's like youth crew hardcore start, stop. Like it wasn't easy.
Right. Well, like I think, and you don't have to agree with me on this or not, or if you have more to add, but I think it's actually easier if you have experience drumming to learn a set within, a condensed amount of time versus almost like learning the riffs of a song. Like
in hardcore parameters, yes.
Yeah.
In hardcore parameters where, you know what you're going to get with the drums. But if it's more involved, other musical styles, drums could be quite the undertaking.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Even for instance, so like youth crew hardcore, my bread and butter. Result of Choice was no problem. But then I did the same thing for Dare. Once again, I did not know the songs well enough to just they weren't in my head. I didn't know. Right. So we went into like a practice space in Colombia, me, Jose, who actually knew the songs, and Mike Body. And we're just trying to play through them in the practice space. And we're like, this is gonna be bad, just because we didn't like Jose knew him, but me and Mike didn't. So we were getting it together, and we're like, but then by I think we practiced for maybe 2 hours, maybe.
Mm.
That might even be giving it too much praise. It might have been an hour. I think we only rented the spot for an hour and paid for it. It was like $10, which is nice. It's cheap. And then we get out and I'm just like, fuck. So then I put my headphones in. I'm listening to it the whole walk back to the venue because GAG has a show that night in Bogota, like a pre-show. And I'm just walking. It's like a 2-mile walk to the venue. So I put my headphones in. I just listen to the playlist over and over and over. And then we get to the show and then I play the GAG songs. And by the time we're done with the GAG set, I'm like, oh, I don't remember the songs anymore. Then the next day we go to practice before the show, the actual fest, Bogota Fest. And I'm the only one that shows up. And then Body shows up a little bit later and we're just kind of like, okay, I guess we're not doing a run through. And then I see that GAG is billed before Dare. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm going to forget everything.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because you're going to play all these other songs and then you're going to get off stage and you're like, oh, no. Versus
it would be
like,
way better if I could do the Dare stuff first. But people from Bogota are very excited to see Dare. They hadn't played Dare. And I didn't want to complain or cause any like lineup issues. So I was like, all right, look at it as a challenge. I'm going to try my hardest to play 100% with GAG as I can, to play as good as I possibly can, and then sit down and kill the GAG set or kill the Dare set. So then we do GAG. I feel great about it. I get back down. I put on my headphones really quick. I'm like running through. I'm like, okay, yeah. I just leave all my stuff set up. And then we sit up there and it sounded awesome. And talked to Mike and Jose about it. And they're both just like, man, we killed it. Like the front. And a lot of that was because of the front of house sound too. Because everything was so Mike perfectly, super well balanced. I mean, Body is straight up professional hardcore musician. Like Jose as well plays in like a million bands. Same with myself. Like we're all very well versed in what we do. I don't feel like my performance was the best it could have been. I don't feel like I played to the best of my ability, but everybody else said it was great. So I'm just going to take their word for it.
Yeah. It's, the reason that I ask is like, I've done fill-in duty for a number of bands as well, but like on way smaller of levels, nothing to what you've done. But the most recent time I was flying to a fest in Toronto from Calgary with another band, like kind of. I think majority of the people, like I'm definitely on like the dad compared to some people on the age side, but like this young band, first time playing outside of Calgary. They had some fill-ins lined up, and then we had like a layover in Winnipeg, like in the middle of Canada, kind of as we're traveling east.
Yeah.
And then they were like, like all of our drum or our guitar and drum fill-in fell through, and it was like we were playing that same day that we were traveling as well. And I just like, because if hardcore's taught me anything, it's just like problem solve mode over to the maximum. So it's like, nope, we're gonna figure this out. And at least for me, I was listening to the guitar stuff and I was just like, I only know these songs like you were saying, like maybe half of what, because I'm sure you filled in for a couple bands before where it's like, I know these songs. Like I jam these songs all the time. It's like like I've done the air drums in my car.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a lot easier versus you're actually like learning like the stops and all the little intricacies. So that was me, maybe like give or take one or two songs. So I was like, I knew the drummer was a guitarist as well. So I was like, hey, do you know the songs on guitar? He's like, I could piece it together. I was like, I can do the drums if you can do the guitar. So we like had this very makeshift kind of thing. And like, I have never played drums in a hardcore setting before this as well. Like I've done like just random little things, but like a lot of people were like, wait, why are you playing drum? Like they didn't even realize it. But like, I think I think to what you said, like I think when we know it's like, yeah, like we could have done better, but when people on the outside were like, no, it was fucking sick. Then it's like, okay, like at least from the outsider's perspective, it was everything made sense. But there was definitely a couple times where I was like playing, whether it was like a tom part or a fast part, I was like, oh, I definitely like fully doubled up how many times this actually happens. So it is,
Yeah, no one's gonna notice but you.
yeah. But we just kept it moving and yeah. But it's I believe like you, it's not that you can really like, oh, I'm gonna be a person who just fills in periodically for bands, because you don't really know until it's happening of like, oh, can I be the one to help solve this issue that's in front of me? But I think at the very least being down to do that is the big thing.
It's a skill you really learn through hardcore, that like on your feet, on the fly, just kind of get it done. This has to be handled without stress and without freaking out. I just thought of one that was even faster, but not a full set. Robert Gade in Costa Rica. I wasn't playing drums, and there were two songs they put on the set list that I had never played ever on bass. So it was me and Nico. There's a funny picture I took of us in the bathroom of the venue while the band before us was playing. So it's so loud, just trying to riff the two songs together and just being like, I think I got it. And then it was fun. The very first tour also that I played with Angel Dust was almost 2 months in Europe with Touche Amore. And like, those were big shows, like, and you know, everything's mic'd. You need to play well. Like 1,000 to 2,000 cap venues in Europe, some of the shows. And I was like, yeah, I think I know these songs. And literally at the time too, like I didn't have any streaming services or anything. I had a record player. So I was listening to Rock the Fuck On forever, like track by track, just like moving it back and playing along to it and being like, no, I think these are the notes. Like I was never taught the songs. It was just kind of like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is it. And then the rest was history from there. And it was totally fine. It was like, you know, I take it very seriously. If I'm filling in, I'm not going to play bad. Like I'm going to try.
Right.
And so, yeah, with anything that I've ever done for any bands, and then I did well enough, because after that tour is when they asked me if I would join, and I was like, okay, cool. Like I did a good job. And then, like you said, that outside validation where someone says like, you're in your head and you're just like, oh, I'm sucking or I'm messing up, but someone else lets you know you did a good job, and you're like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a very important note to say, is like, it's not just like, oh, just fill in for this band and then just like not try to do a good job, obviously.
You gotta fucking try.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's not only just your friends that you're probably doing that for. It's also like, it's a resemblance of you as well, to be like, well, that's sick you did that, but you actually sucked. So like, it actually lowers the value as to what's happening. So
yeah, take yourself seriously and be respectful of other people's time too. So yeah, I've had plenty of people fill in for out where I've just been like, one, I feel disrespected. Two, I'm just like, why did you even do this? Sure. Like you clearly are not trying. Like, please don't play with us again.
With peace and love, you will not be getting a call back for any future
exactly
situations.
Actually, similar thing was with Change. So Change happened over COVID. A RAM just hit me up and was like, would you be interested in something like this? I was in Atlanta during COVID. He flew there for like a business trip. We went out to eat, and I was just like, yeah, let's do it. Never played the song, only just like listening to it and like tapping along with my hands, right? Our first tour was Europe, and the first show was Gabby's Fest in Barcelona, Can't Keep Us Down. And it was a big ass show. And I think we did like one practice at a space, shout out Chris Williams, that he hooked us up with. It was like me, Matt Bartell, who worked on JAG, plays in End of Days, Chris Williams, who's a legend, he's in a million bands over the course of history and still is one of the coolest people ever. Just the three of us at the practice space playing the songs together for the first time. And those songs are like, that's also like, what was the term that we had?
Advanced hardcore?
Advanced
capital
hardcore.
A?
That is capital A, and advanced hardcore LP. So like the bass is probably the hardest work on that LP. So Matt had his work cut out for him. Chris just gets to rock because we have two guitar players, and he just kind of gets to rock. And then I'm like trying to be as dynamic as possible as I can with the drums, and then we just fly straight to Barcelona and play a fest. And I was so nervous, but it was awesome. It went great.
Do you have a running list of all the bands that you have either filled in for, even if it was like one time? Like I can imagine that it's like. Can I take a guess?
Go for it.
I'm gonna guess 26.
Maybe 26. Probably by the time I was like 23. So I'm at about, if you count. So here's the thing: the hard list of bands that I've played, like it has to have at least been one show, real band. It's about, I think it's like, it's close to 50 because my total list is 64. It's close to 50. And then if you count cover sets that I've done, like an entire band, but a cover, Void, Negative Approach, Integrity, a Youth Crew medley, like these different things, then it bumps it up a little bit. And then if you count like performing one song, like I played Soul Vice into Reality Unfolds on stage with Captain Rice on drums once. And then I did like just like little cameos where you play like one song with a band on stage. If you count those, then I get up to my 64. But in terms of bands that I've toured and played shows with, it's like 50s. My OG list is on, I'm not going to be unprofessional pulling my phone, but my OG list is on my old phone. But my recent notes list, I did, had me at like everything I could remember was like almost 50, like 48.
That's
a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. I'm sure by the time that, when do you think you'll hit three digits? As far as
actually, it's more if I include like bands I did as a kid, like Joe's band, like a kid, like middle school. There was this band called Captain Jesus. We played a talent show. A band called Nutmeg. We did one band that was like, dude, it was so bad. When I was in middle school, like my favorite band was like the Misfits and AFI. Those are my favorite bands, and they played on Funky Monkey all the time. What's the AFI record with the like fountain on the front? Like I think it came out like 97. Art of Drowning. Art of Drowning had just come out, and we covered like Days of the Phoenix, and like I could barely play drums, and we're like, I think I was like 12. And then Jimmy Hitchman and the Peppermint Twins, an AC/DC cover band I did for a high school talent show. There's like, if you count stuff like that, it creeps up a little more. That's technically that's a performance. We had to practice and perform.
Yeah.
But with
a
real
couple
bands,
hours notice, you could probably, remember how to play all those songs again,
Yeah, they're in there. But real bands, I don't know if I'll hit 3 digits now because I feel like I care more. I'm not as like whimsical about like projects. I'm not just going to put something out to put it out. Like I really want to curate something.
Yeah.
I still want to do like a really massively mean kind of power violence, like crossed out project, just like a couple EPs that I could just release for fun. That's just all me. But yeah, no plans to be being that prolific.
Yeah. And we're not saying all of this to be like, oh, be a super disorganized band and hit up Jeff to fill in if you need a physician filled. That's not what we're trying to do.
Please at least have your shit together, and I'll be down.
It goes both ways. So, Jeff, this was a question that I kind of wanted to use you as a bit of not a test dummy for. That's making it sound a lot more scary than it actually is. It was just a question that I heard in an interview, like just scrolling through my phone, that Shaq ironically was asking someone. So I was like, oh, I like stopped everything. I wrote it down. I was like, I want to ask this and it only, I think, works for someone who's been in hardcore for as long as someone like you have. So the question is, who do you see in like current day hardcore that you see like a younger version of yourself?
Whoa, that's a cool question. Huh. Oh, you know what? Actually, we were just talking at JAG. Angel. Angel was talking about how he was like, dude, I'm filling in for so many bands. Like, I'm stretched so thin. And I was like, oh, I remember that feeling of being like, I've put my hands in too many jars and you're just, being
Yeah,
stretched between all these different bands. I was like, at some point, you'll have to take a brief break and then you can come back a little bit more like,
right.
you know. But I feel like I don't feel like he's young enough. He's a full grown adult. He's
Yes,
got his
yeah.
own like life and things.
But
So I'm
shout out
trying
to
to think of
Angel.
like
He's a
young,
badass vocalist,
great,
drummer, and tattooer. Doing
and he'll
everything.
take it all seriously and play well. So yeah,
Hmm.
so shout out him. When I'm trying to think of like younger people though. It's interesting because as you get older, it's like kind of strange to be friends with people that are too young. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like
Right. Without
at
the
a certain
hardcore
point, you kind of realize
context, there's a lot of like eyebrow
the
raising.
buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But man, it's tough because people don't like the stuff I like anymore right now. Like there's no like just politically driven straight edge hardcore. That's not really a thing. That's not
Yeah.
popular
Well,
or
we're
exciting.
not trying to
So
seek a carbon copy version of you. If there was, I'd
okay,
be a little
okay.
like, but like I like the Angel answer, even though I know like Angel is a lot like maybe doesn't fit exactly what you think that the answer should be. But if there's anyone else like that broadly kind of fits the description as far as a younger version of Jeff.
Just trying to do the most. Just maximizing your time. Trying to do the most as much
Mm-hmm.
as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I don't know. Is that question too deep to be asking someone? But
Well, I think here I got to think. I was
yeah,
thinking
you take your time.
internationally too, which I think helps. I
Mm.
really like Hideta, who does Brightside booking. He plays in tons of different bands. Number Nine being one of them, Brave Out being one of them. He's from Osaka and he does tons of booking out there all over Japan. But the way he thinks about hardcore is exactly like we resonate really well with like how we think about hardcore like as a means for like creating opportunity for yourself and your community. And when it comes to like investing work in your hardcore community, I think Hideta. He's also so kind. He's so kind, and I always try, as someone who is like just a victim of so much just uh, um, like violence and animosity. As a kid, I always wanted to make people feel comfortable and cared for, regardless, irrespective of like who they are or their relation to me. My number one default is going to be kindness always. So like, I feel like he also embodies that. So I feel like Hideta is a good answer. And he does
Hideta.
a ton. He plays in so many bands and puts on for his scene so hard, books, promotes, does fest. Yeah, Hideta.
Yeah. So salute and shout out to Hideta.
He's a man.
Jeff, I feel like I could honestly chat with you for hours upon end, and I want to be sensitive of your time that you've given so graciously to us. So I got one more question before we start to close out this episode.
Okay.
And I ask this for every single person who comes on the podcast. So tell me off the top of your head a favorite or go-to mosh story that always comes to mind, or you always share when you're talking to people. Could be wholesome, could be gruesome, could be odd man out related or not. Whatever's first to dome is how we start to end the episode.
The first one I thought of is so incriminating, but I'm going to say it anyways. Whatever. I think I was like 21. Yeah, I think I was like 21. Me and my buddy Josh, Sergeant X, he was ex-military vet dude who went AWOL. He's really sick. He was like, I think he was like maybe 25 at the time. I was 21, he was 25. We drive down to Portland to see Death Threat. Obviously, it's Death Threat, so many spin kicks were had. One of my spin kicks that night ended up knocking a woman unconscious.
Okay.
I felt extremely bad about it. And didn't really know what to do. So I pretended kind of like I didn't notice and kept moshing. And then the person had to get carried out. And I was like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And it was like kind of a, a young adult moment where it's like you don't want to hurt someone. And you just, I mean, I also at that time, keep in mind, bear in mind, I'm not like this big, giant, like masculine person hurting someone. I was like 135 pounds.
Right.
Like I was a small, skinny kid. And like, but after that show, it devolved into, there was no issue. Fortunately, the person was totally fine and everything was good. But
Yeah.
that show devolved into Josh, the guy I was with, throwing a chair at a bar. We're walking out of the gig. So the mosh continued into the street after the show. We're walking out of the gig, and there's a dude at a bar who like said something to Josh or something. I don't know what it is. Josh had a really short fuse when he was younger, and we were also with some other Portland people, and he just picks up a chair from across, like, how it'll be a bar and there's like, a railing maybe like waist high around. He picks up a chair from the inside the bar and throws it at the guy, and then it just turns into a brawl. So it went from fighting in the death threat pit to brawling in the streets of Portland at a bar to like random drunk people that were talking shit. Me, Josh, and two of our Portland friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first one that comes to mind because it's half embarrassing and then it's on a cooler note at the end because it ends in
a bar fight.
Yeah, in a bar fight. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good. I like how it's almost like two stories in one. Cause
it is.
Yeah. So
Speaking of which, actually, I'll throw in all of Zach's stage dives during GAG this year as well.
Okay. Just all
every stage dive Zach did because they were all so ridiculous and pretty much just first degree assault each one.
Is he
pretty
the
awesome.
With arms wide open swan dive
Absolutely.
guy?
Yeah, there you
go. I'm actually this is funny because I'm happy that more people who are that a menace to society are getting the praise, because I think seeing the screenshots of like, just the dive, I defaulted to thinking, oh, like Fubu Man, like that dude went to that fest and is doing that.
yeah.
But I like seeing more people who are going to be like that much of a menace to the pit, getting their props. So shout out to Zach, and you keep
shout
diving.
Stage dive is a
Jeff.
good way to live. Yeah.
Put that on a shirt. Jeff, all of your personal links and band links will be in the description and in the show notes. Anything you want to shout out, anything you want to plug, or anything you want to send the people off
on? Yeah, so I guess like pretty soon I'll be doing more social media networking. I've always been bad at marketing. Right now it's just my personal IG. But I'm going to create one for my training programs because I do I'm a CPT and I do strength and conditioning coaching. And then I'm going to create one for the fest, which will be the deal in Seattle in September. Keep an eye on that first weekend. Some international bands, some fun favorites. And then I'm going to do one for, actually, I've been hosting interviews for the last year or so when I've been traveling of people that I'll release as a podcast, just kind of inspiring people I've met throughout life. So keep an eye out for that as well. I'm calling it Mind of a Lifer. And it's just people that I find inspiring and who inspire me to keep doing what I'm doing and keep me excited about hardcore. So keep an eye out for those things. They're unfortunately in the future. So for now, you can just check me out at my personal IG. It's the only social media I have. And we can talk. And if you have contacts in Africa, please hit me up. Circle back.
Yeah. Let's circle back to that. And I'll just say it, but also, I'm sure I'll be following along with everything. But when those things do become reality, because someone could be checking this episode out in next year or whatever. So I'll make sure that we update the episode with those new links once we make that.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's what we would do.
Appreciate your time very much.
No, I appreciate yours. I feel like I've learned so much. I feel like there's such a really interesting and beautiful story of your life, Jeff, and I feel like we just kind of got to scratch the surface. So, I I think having you on again at some point in the future is a definite must, and I just really
Well, I'd be
appreciate your
happy. Yeah.
time. And I'm very excited to see y'all for Capital Hardcore um, Fest in Edmonton at the end of the month here.
Let's rock, man. I'll see you there.
Yes. Fuck yeah.